Bernadette Joy, welcome back to So Money. It's so good to see you.
So good to see you again. Thanks for having me.
Yes, you are in retirement?
I am. It's
How is that
actually
possible with
uh
with the beautiful skin that you have? You don't look a day over 41.
well, I am 41, so I guess it's good. And it's actually been a year since I decided to retire. And then my husband left his job in December. So we've been hanging out since then, and it's been really weird. I don't know how else to
Yeah.
describe it.
Well, let's get into the weird. I mean, is it weird because it's not what you planned? Is it weird because just weird things are happening? Like, tell me the specific.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so weird in that it's definitely not going as we planned in the sense that I this as someone in the kind of personal finance space. We plan and we plan and we plan, and then you expect things to go how you want them to, and then they just don't. So a lot of things have happened, good and bad, I would say, in retirement. And we can talk a little bit more about those things. But also, I think because there was a lot of unexpected emotions and feelings that came up with detaching myself from productivity and detaching my identity from kind of being like the go to person. And I'm
Right.
realizing that a lot of the things that people I think preconceive about what retirement would be, and I had some preconceived notions myself, like they just didn't turn out like I thought.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get into some of the things that have shocked you about retirement and how it's not quote unquote going as planned as you wrote for CNBC recently. But let's get a little
Mm.
bit, let's backtrack a little bit. And we'll first remind people that you've been on the show before talking about how you paid off $300,000 in debt. You became a millionaire and now you've left then you left your corporate job behind, became sort of a personal finance educator and expert. What was your reasoning for wanting to quote unquote retire at 40? I mean, that's hyper early.
Yes. I would love to give a more deep answer other than I was just tired. I was just really tired.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I've been working since college. I worked through, in college, and then I consistently, worked in corporate for the first decade of my career, and then the second decade of my career was as an entrepreneur. And being an entrepreneur, you really never get to turn your brain off. And I didn't realize I was burned out until after the fact. And in hindsight, when I had first set the goal to retire by 40, it was really more so the fire thing of like financial independence, retire early. Like I had heard about that, but I was thinking about being more work optional. But then as I got closer and closer, I was just like, no, I actually just don't want to work that much anymore. I want to have fun. I want to be able to relax without feeling like I have to wake up every day to a schedule and an alarm clock. And, a lot of people, it's been very interesting. A lot of people have commented on the fact that, retiring at 40 is hyper early. And then I guess luckily I don't, sometimes people don't assume that I'm 40. And so people assume I'm younger than that. And it's been very interesting to hear people's commentary about what we think is early or too early or on time. And that's been
Yeah.
very interesting to receive that feedback also.
Do you think the word retirement carries a weight and an expectation that maybe it's a psychological thing, right? Like if you had told yourself, I'm just going to take a break, you wouldn't have been so
Yes.
disappointed.
Yes. So I think retirement is a very heavy word. I still actually use the word retirement because I think I want to debunk that notion that retirement means that you've lost purpose, that you are no longer contributing to society, that you are just playing pickleball every day or whatever. And initially last year, when I decided that I wanted to test it out, I basically told people I was going on a sabbatical because that felt more appropriate. That felt like less questions. To be honest, when I would tell people I was going sabbatical, everyone was like, good for you. Great for you. Like, I want to do that. But then when I told people after I realized that, oh, I want to extend the sabbatical and actually go more on the retirement side, then people had a lot more questions like, what are you going to do? And how are you going to spend your time? And how are
Yeah.
you going to afford things? And I noticed that a lot of fears that people have around retirement and again, detaching themselves from work, felt like it was being projected onto me. And I think in a positive way, in the sense of just like it forced me to ask these questions to myself.
Hmm. How about your partner? Are you both in the same camp with this psychologically, like feeling like maybe we should have kind of not so much not done it, but maybe gone in with a
Mm.
different plan or different goals in mind?
Well, what was interesting about this is where things did not go as planned is that I intended to retire regardless of whether or not my husband wanted to. And to be honest, he is very much like wants stability, likes the structure. He didn't actually hate his job. He actually really enjoyed his job, but it started becoming an issue because one, I was traveling a lot and then he would have to ask for PTO and stuff if he wanted to travel with me. And so long story short, he ended up getting let go from his job because he was like too independent. And what I mean by that is that he had been working remotely for his job since like 2020, since the pandemic. And then suddenly his former employer was trying to bring people back into the office, which nobody wanted to do. And he actually got approved to work remotely from where we moved to, which is Las Vegas. But then whenever I was traveling for speaking gigs or retreats or stuff like that, he would come with me and they started tracking his IP and saying, no, if you're going to work remote, you have to sit in your house. You cannot, you cannot work from other places. And we were like, well, why does it matter if he's working? It's not like he was truly working if you ever know my husband, when he's working, he's working. So what did it matter to them if he was working from a hotel room in like Chicago or our house? And so it's actually started becoming an issue. And finally, they came to a head where he's like, well, I'm not going to just sit in my house to work from there if I've already been approved to work remotely. And so they decided to let him go for that. And so that came much sooner than he had anticipated to go into retirement. So he was kind of actually forced into
Yeah.
it in a way. And it was a shock to his system. It was a shock to us as well, because we weren't planning to figure out the whole health insurance thing
Right.
and, transferring all the 401ks and stuff. And so that's one of those things where in hindsight, now that we're kind of 9 months removed from that, it was actually such a blessing because I don't know that he would have left on his own terms like that. And we were so grateful that when he did leave, that we had the resources. Like it wasn't an issue. Like he was like, well, okay, I guess I'm just not going back to work right now.
Wow. That is a privilege, we can say, to be able to
It is
like have that
absolutely.
choice at your disposal. So one of the things that you wrote about on CNBC reflecting on this early retirement is that you still worry about money. And
Hmm.
take me into your financial life right now. So, how much did you have saved before you felt comfortable to retire? And how are you making ends meet? Are you downsizing? Are you like spending less? Like, take me sort of to the inflow, outflow of it all.
Yes. So as of today, our current net worth sits around 2.2 million, which side note, I want to go back and listen to our previous episode and I wonder where my net worth was there and just how much I underestimated the power of compounding in a short amount of time. I feel like it took me kind of almost 3 decades to build that first million and then took a much shorter time to build the next million just from investing. And of the 2.2 million, my husband and I did decide over time we downsized from like our single family home in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we decided to move to Las Vegas, Nevada, where I'm sitting right now. Which now we live in a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom condo where you see me. We are very minimalist. If you come to our place, people ask us if we've moved in yet. And we're like, no, this is it. This is all our this is all our stuff.
Has the moving truck
Uh,
arrived? No, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, like well, this is it, and then we have our paid off car, and then the rest of our assets are investments, primarily our retirement accounts. And what we had to figure out is closing the gap between where we are now at 41 and 44, and 59 and a half, where we could start pulling from our retirement accounts. So in the last actually probably since the last time I was on the show is when we started really focusing on the brokerage side of
Mm-hmm.
our
Mm-hmm.
account and figuring out not only how can we just like put into the S&P 500 and like let it grow, but also like how can we create dividend income from that. So we started doing a lot more ETFs that would provide us a monthly income to psychologically help me get over the hump of replacing our paychecks, which I didn't realize that it would psychologically be so much more challenging for me to like pull money out of investments. Cause like we're always taught like just put the money and let it sit there, put the money and let it sit there.
Right.
But no one tells you, well, what do you do when you're 40 something and you have to have money to live on? So we've created some dividend income that is enough to pay for our basic living expenses because our home is paid off. So when we don't have a mortgage and we don't have a car payment, then the rest of our living expenses has been pretty manageable to be able to do that. But the monkey wrench that went into all of this is that I'm a huge BTS fan and BTS went on tour this year and completely screwed up my budget.
Oh man.
Completely like
How many times
blew the
have you
budget.
what's the forecast? How many times are we going to be going to a BTS concert and how much are those tickets?
Okay. So far my husband and I have been to 14 concerts in 6 different cities, including in Europe, which was super fun. And depending on, where you sit in the stadium, like we have been very lucky aside from just being able to use the money that we've saved up. I have a completely separate bank account that is called my BTS travel fund, and it's a high yield savings account. And that's what we've been pulling from. So luckily I haven't had to pull from investments for this, but the concert tickets can range from like a couple $100 to a couple $1,000 depending on how close you want to sit. And so you and I were just talking before about how they were at MetLife, and I was there and I was in sound check there.
Wow.
So it was definitely pricey. And then you add in the flights and the hotels. And then my AJ and I, we saw all 4 concerts in Vegas when we first moved here. We timed our move so that we would be here for all of this concerts in Vegas. And then we went on the road for 6 weeks and weren't home for the last. I just came home yesterday from all of these concerts. And so all of that has added up and has been way more than I had planned, if I'm being honest.
Love the honesty. I love the honesty. I mean, does part of you think about like re-entering the workforce at some point? Maybe not doing
Every day, to be
every
honest.
day. Okay. What does
every
that
day.
look?
Yeah.
What would that look like? Because we've had a lot of conversations on this show and voices in my head that are like, I just want to burn it down. I'm so tired. I think midlife presents that for
Mhm.
so many people because you're right. We have been working. If we've been working since college or even high school, like most of our lives, we've been working at till this point. And yeah, we're a little tired. And sometimes we conflate that with, I want to give it all up. I want a clean slate, as opposed to like, I want to take a real step back, have fun, relax, live off my savings, and then kind of figure out my next steps. What would be your reentry, you think, if that ever happens?
I've had many. I think about this a lot. So true story. I went to the concerts in Boston, and during one of the concerts, one of my teeth just started hurting,
Oh,
and then the pain got progressively worse to the point where I was like looking for an emergency dentist in Boston and had to wait until I got back to Vegas yesterday. And I get to my new dentist because I haven't had a dentist yet, who, side note, sounds a lot like Matthew McConaughey. And he's telling me in his Matthew McConaughey voice that I have to get a root canal on my tooth. And my first thought was like, oh my God, how much is that? Because
right.
I hadn't planned that. And like I said earlier, AJ and I, this is the first time we're foraying into having our own insurance, paying for everything in full. And so I was joking with the dental hygienist saying, I need to know how much this is so I don't have to I don't want to have to unretire from all this dental work. And so I think about it a lot. Basically, anytime there's like a large major expense that I just wasn't anticipating, my initial reaction, if I'm being again totally honest, is like, ooh, do I need to go back to work? Because this is not something that was in my budget that I had not anticipated that I probably should have. And to your question of just like, well, what does that look like? I've always enjoyed teaching. to be honest. Like, that's why I became a personal finance educator. I loved teaching. When I first started my career, I had two choices: to go to Teach for America or to go into HR corporate. And I decided to go the corporate route. And in hindsight, I realized that I've always loved teaching, but it doesn't necessarily have to be like in a school, environment. And another friend of ours, Yaneli Espinal, she is like really big in the education space, trying to get financial literacy up and running in all these different states. And so she and I actually just met recently and talked about how I might be able to contribute into that cause of bringing financial literacy into school. So I think it would probably still be something adjacent to what I do today, but maybe less intensity, maybe less media, maybe less like someone, emailing me and saying, "Hey, can you be on TV in like 2 hours?" Like, I realize that that's not something I want to continue like long term. I could do it every now and then, but I think education. And then separately, I'm like, people have asked me, like, if you're going to go to this many concerts at this point, like, why don't you just go work for them? Like, can't you just figure out a job? That
Exactly. A roadie,
would help you
a
there.
bus manager. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What can you
So then,
explain the BTS phenomenon to me? Because I don't think they're not marketing to me. It's okay. Um, to be honest, I don't have time for a lot of like music and entertainment in my life right now. Like, I don't even
mm,
know. I'm struggling to even like finish a book at this point. So
mm-hmm.
take me to the BTS world indulge me for a little bit and our audience.
Sure. Sure. So, BTS is a K-pop group that was formed in 2013. So they've been around for 13 years, but I think they really had a big, kind of glow up during the pandemic. And actually, I think you would find their story really interesting from a branding perspective. So from like 2013 up until the pandemic, they were really more known as K-pop. I would say the similar trajectory is kind of like when Taylor Swift moved from country to like mainstream pop. And
Mhm.
in 2020, I don't know what they did to feed the algorithm so much of their content, such that I don't have the numbers to back this up, but I will go find I'll go find sources for this afterwards. But going to all of these concerts, I think the majority of the fandom is actually 40 and older. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, yeah. There's a misconception that it's like a lot of like younger teenage girls or like 20-year-olds. It's actually a lot of older women. And so I've actually interviewed some people when I was on the road, asking people how they got into BTS. And during the pandemic, it seems that their messaging around loving yourself and friendship and just kind of general positivity reached people at a time when people really needed it, when they were isolated. And so I've heard some really touching stories of older women, like not even just 40s, like 50s, 60s. Like, I've seen women 70s and 80s at these concerts, and they were saying like, "Oh, when none of my family could come visit me because I was quarantined or whatever, like I just started watching BTS content and it made me happy, and I loved it." And what I think has been really interesting about the phenomenon most recently, and why I really enjoy them. One is I grew up as an Asian American with like very little Asian representation, especially in pop music. There was nobody.
None.
Uh, but they have crossed over to mainstream pop music, not just K-pop anymore. And this past album, they brought on like kind of the best of the best in terms of Grammy award-winning producers, people who used to produce for like Britney Spears or some of these other big names that you would know. But very recently, they announced that they're not going to be submitting for the Grammys this year, which is the year that they probably would have won.
Why is that?
And so the Grammys this past year recently announced a new category for best Asian pop performance, I believe. And it drew a pretty big backlash, I think, from a lot of people saying like, why do we need a separate category for Asian pop music? And also, first of all, Asian music is so diverse. Like, putting Japanese music and Chinese music and Korean music and Filipino music like all in the same one
Yeah,
category, like, that doesn't make sense. Also, you didn't do this for Dua Lipa or Ed Sheeran, for example. Like, there's no European
right.
pop category. So what is it different about Asians? And so it drew this kind of big controversy, and BTS decided that they were just not going to submit this year, and it turned into a whole thing because for the last 2 years, the Grammys have had BTS coming to the Grammys to perform at the Grammys or to be seen at the Grammys, and that's what shot up the ratings. So, like, if you take away BTS from the ratings of the Grammys, just like every other award show, their ratings have been down. And so I'm like really excited from a media perspective, like someone who's
Yeah.
been in the media to watch this unfold. And it's been a
Wow.
really interesting business case study. So this is my way to try to like reel you
You
in.
could teach BTS at like a university. You know that there's a who is it? There's actually a course on Michael Jackson at NYU. Like, I mean,
Hmm.
when you have that much of an influence across different verticals, not just music, but media and branding and, you know, politics, whatever, like
Hmm.
midlife women all the way to like, teens. I think that's a wow. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. That was really a great download. Appreciate that. Um, Going back to healthcare, so not a smooth
Yes.
transition, but going back to your
No.
healthcare story, you've had to get creative about securing your health care, I've read, in
Hmm.
this retirement era that you're in. Can you walk us through some of that creativity?
Yeah, so I have a couple of like chronic conditions. That's one of the reasons that made me kind of nervous to retire because the one thing that I hear from so many people who are contemplating even just regular traditional retirement is like, what do you do about healthcare, especially in the US? And so I started doing a lot of research 2 years ago and started learning a lot more about like medical tourism of, going to other countries to potentially, get kind of the healthcare that you need at a much more affordable price. And of course,
Uh,
there's all these concerns because here in the U.S. we're touted that we're the best in the world, and we have the world class facilities and stuff. And so I said, well, I need to see this for myself. So last year I went to a conference in Malaysia about financial independence and about kind of individual sovereignty, and they happened to also offer that you could go to a medical clinic in Malaysia in Kuala Lumpur and get like a full um, annual exam, basically, right? And so I'm thinking annual exam for me here in the US has been 15 to 30 minutes with my doctor once a year where they just like, tap a bunch of things and then just be like, all right, you're on your way, be on your way. And I remember one year in the US where I was so livid because I asked one question during my annual exam and they counted that as an entire new appointment and charged me an additional copay for that one question I asked about my recurring like health condition, right? So I went to Malaysia, me and my husband went there, and when I tell you we got the most comprehensive healthcare I've ever received, I mean, I was just floored. I was just floored. And so we got, our normal stuff, but then we also got like every test under the sun. They found something in one of my breasts and they sent me immediately to go get a follow-up in the same day. Whereas like here in the US, I've had friends who like they find something, it takes like 3 weeks to like get a follow-up consultation or something. And so by the end of the one day, we had gone through everything that we could possibly get checked up, and had, a consultation each individually with a doctor. And they said, you can stay here and talk to me as long as you want to. There's no additional cost or whatever. And the cost for me and AJ combined was $700.
wow. That's amazing.
Where one of those tests that I was supposed to get here instead of in Malaysia would have cost me $1,400
Oh
by
my God.
itself. So, ever since then, AJ and I have thought a lot more about, because we like to travel anyway, of like researching more about what healthcare looks like in other countries. And then other creative ways is that, we actually this year we're trying out a concierge doctor.
Uh-huh.
Again, sounds like a privilege, but when we kind of looked at the cost that I would have paid out of pocket every time I had to go get something checked up on, it actually, I think, is saving us money by having basically a monthly subscription to a doctor who
Yeah.
can talk to me at any point. And then, not so creative, but because we have more time on our hands now, AJ and I have been really focused on wellness, like preventative wellness. So eating healthy, going to yoga every day, things that we didn't have the time for because we were so wrapped up in our jobs that we have been feeling a lot better. And you're like the third person who's told me, oh, like your skin is glowing. And it wasn't like that before,
Huh.
actually. I think my skin has actually gotten better because I've been taking this time off.
Do you have any kind of just general health insurance, like high deductible, like just in case something
Hmm.
happens?
Yes. So we
Okay.
do also have we have like a regular PPO plan because of my chronic condition. So the
Yeah.
copays for some of the prescription I have to take is for that. And so, you know, the hard part of this is, for AJ and I, it's probably costing us like $1,300 a month for just insurance and like, the other services. And so that's something that we had to really actively plan for because that's not how much we were paying before we retired. So that's something that what I will say is if people are considering retiring early, like I'm not going to lie, the costs are a lot for healthcare, but it's not impossible if you put a plan in place.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Bernadette. Everything I'm hearing from you about early retirement, I hear echoed even amongst the traditional retiree cohort where they retire at 59 and a half, 60, but they've got that 5-year gap until Medicare kicks in. So they're scrambling to figure out they need a plan for healthcare. That's not a given. But also this fear that you talk about of like drawing down your investments, using using your money that you've saved, that you've only been saving, and now you have to flip a switch and like get into a different mode. That's also a real rude awakening in some ways for the retirees because they're like, will there be enough? And even though you're trying to do it on like a 4% or 3% withdrawal rate, like there's still a voice in your head that's like, spend less, spend less. And
Yes.
so,
Hmm.
that's actually a phenomenon right now where retirees are just like, they're opting to not take the vacations and spend their money, even though they have enough of it on paper. We are living
Hmm.
longer, maybe we haven't planned for a 35-year retirement, and of course, healthcare
Hmm.
gets more and more expensive as you age in some cases if you have issues like, Alzheimer's or dementia, like having to go into a care facility can be extremely bankrupting for some retirees. Um, so
Absolutely.
one of the other points in your CNBC article about kind of like the surprises of early retirement is that you're not done building your community. I think this is a really important point because obviously you have AJ and you guys like sound like a great team and there's a lot that you do together, but outside of that, when you're not working, when you're not, you know, quote unquote running your business, like that also you have to intentionally find people to hang out with and build community. How has that been going for you?
That part has been going better than expected. Actually, a large part of it due to BTS, if I'm being
Okay.
silly here, so I started posting about these different concerts that I'm going to, and also the Jason travels that we're going, and it was a shift for me because, and I think you can relate to this. So much of social media for me for the last decade has been around building my business and getting visibility as a brand and all that. And for the first time in my life, I've just been posting for fun and and just posting whatever like I feel like and things that have nothing to do with legacy or whatever, just like good old fashioned fun. And girl next to me, she's like, are you Bernadette? I was like, this is
I'm like,
weird. And she's like, I saw your post about so and so. And so um traveling to these different places and actually meeting people who I've like conversed with online has been really, really fun. But then aside from that, and I think you'd appreciate this too, because I know you have an appreciation for comedy, I've started to take up comedy as a hobby. And so, yeah, I did before I left Charlotte and moved to Las Vegas, I did my first like bigger stand-up comedy show, and it was the most terrifying thing
oh my
ever.
God.
I yeah, I thought it was gonna be like a handful of people, like not it was supposed to be like a charity show for girls in tech, and I show up, and it was 330 people, and that was the first time I was just like, I think I should just walk out. Like, I should just turn around and walk out
I'm
because
going to cut my
like stand up
losses.
comedy is
Yeah.
different. Yeah, than the regular speaking. And then just yesterday, AJ and I started up improv classes again. And so we are finding community in hobbies and joyful things where before I was finding community in not that it wasn't joyful, but things that were tied to networking or business or, you know, speaking at conferences. And so that has been really lovely. And then the last thing I will say about the community piece, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot. So two weeks ago, one of my really good friends passed away, and he was 40. He was a year younger than me,
Wow.
in New York City. And so it was the first time that a lot of me and my friends who we've grown up with each other. So we've known each other since I knew him since elementary school. We were together, not for the reason that we would hope to be together. And I saw basically how stressed a lot of my friends are who are around the same age as me, because a lot of them are, raising young kids and, doing the grind in New York City. And so I ended up being in New York a week longer than I had anticipated because of attending the services. And so I spent that week just visiting each of my individual girlfriends and helping them like clean up their apartment or watch their kids so they can go like take a break, or
Oh,
finally getting to, set up some time for them to get away for a little bit. And so I realized that so much of what I sacrificed in building this financial independence was I did trade off like time with my friends
mm,
then. And so I'm trying to make up that difference now with the people that I really care about, and actually meaningfully not just say, oh, I support you, but like actually physically go to them and support them in ways that I don't think a lot of my other friends have time for because they're all working full time right now.
mm. I so appreciate this conversation because while someone's listening and they're like, well, I can't afford to retire yet, or I don't want to retire, I think there's a lot to be said about just slowing down a little bit and reflecting on your life, taking even like a 2 week break or a 1 month break. If your work offers you a sabbatical or you've got accumulated vacation days you haven't used, use it and use a portion of that time to really think about how to bring back some joy into your life intentionally. This is a big, big theme on So Money this year. And I think it's not,
Hmm.
I don't think it's just like a coincidence. I think it's that it's where I am in my life. It's where a lot of people, my guests, are in their lives. They've built things and they've worked hard. And now, you go back to that question of like, well, so what is all this for? You know?
Hmm.
And I get it. Days are stressful, days are long, we got a lot on our plates. We're not saying like abandoning that, but being more intentional about fitting into your schedule, into your life, things that actually just bring you pure 100% joy, no ROI other than that. And I think that's a hard thing for people like us because we always want to get the return. Listen, there is a return on joy, right? It's your happiness, it's your health. What's more important than that?
I'm so glad that you're saying this because I'm noticing that transition, in my space as well, of a lot of people who used to be about the grind and, building the personal brand and stuff have been coming to me privately and saying like, you just look like you're having so much fun. I'm so happy,
Yeah.
happy for you. And I really had this wake up call in the last couple of weeks because of my friend, passing away at a young age of like, where's this balance between, yeah, I want to build something meaningful. And also, tomorrow's not promised, which sounds really cliche, but I think that lately there has been a shift. And I think this is why BTS also became really popular, is that their messaging was just around like really joy, and people needed that refreshing reminder of it. And so I highly recommend anyone who's listening to this, you know, that sabbatical or that break that you've been contemplating, because you have, like, just go do it. And,
Yeah.
the worst case scenario is you go back. That's what I said to myself. I said, let me take the sabbatical. And then if I don't like it, then I'll go back to what I was doing.
Right.
But I, I was very privileged and lucky that I didn't have to necessarily go back to that. But now that I am, still, for example, because of the cross section now between personal finance and BTS, I hosted a workshop for just BTS Army. Army is the name of the fandom, on, how to save more money for concerts. It turns out that, all these years that I have been touting like, hey, you should build financial independence for legacy and for mental health and stuff. It turns out like just the message of having more joy and going to more concerts was enough to get people to show up. 180 people registered,
Wow.
more than any other
Bernadette, you're onto it.
workshop that I've
You,
ever done.
you're at the intersection. It's like anything else in life, when we look back at what works, it's like it was easy. It was like you don't have to overthink it. Like you worked hard to get here. And there's
Mm-hmm.
hard work involved in what you have done and are doing. But it's like sometimes when we connect those dots, it's a lot easier than we think it has to be so hard. Like, oh my gosh, I have to think about getting a degree to become an educator to go work at a university. Hey, maybe, sure. But in the meantime, you're having fun at these concerts. And that is a built-in community who definitely needs money to go to the next concert. And you're the
To
right
go to more
person.
concerts.
Just to get
To
a
go to more
beer at the
concerts.
concert is like $25.
Exactly.
So I love
Exactly.
it.
And
I
so,
love it.
yeah, it's been really fun. And that workshop was the funnest workshop that I've ever conducted because it was just like a bunch of girlfriends who were just like, let's just talk about money. Whereas before I'd be like, hello, I'm Bernadette Joy. I'm, personal finance expert, so and so. And now it's just like, I'm here because I want to be here. I'm here because it's fun. I'm here because we have common interests. And, I've been taking the money that I've been making from that workshop and just like reinvesting it back into more freebies, we call it in the community. I've just been making more freebies to give out at future concerts. So it's been really fun to think, to your point of ROI. It's hard to imagine 10 years ago that I would have been in a place when I was $300,000 in debt, and especially with a student loan debt that I felt like was really crushing my soul. 10 years later, to be able to say, hey, I'm able to make money and actually I don't have to like invest or save it right now. I can actually just put it towards making other people happy has been very freeing, very healing.
Hmm. Bernadette Joy, thank you so much for coming on with this great story, this great insight into your life. We're so happy for you, and we're cheering you on.
Thank you so much. This has been such a fun conversation.